starting the webinar.
Excellent. Right, hi Matt.
There we go.
First of all, thank you very much for doing this. I'm going to break one of the rules I promised for myself and do this from an airport, which is completely wrong. And the worst thing about being in America is that they'll do all the announcements in English, plus then they'll repeat it in Spanish.
Yeah.
So it could be worse. It could be Switzerland.
No, absolutely. If you get the wrong announcement, then all of a sudden it lasts for like 3 minutes.
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, one of the many reasons for doing these webcasts was to educate the marketplace and show people interesting things that are happening. I mean, inevitably there's going to be a bit of a sales pitch involved in these whole things. But what I was fascinated with what you were doing over the last couple of months was just this whole concept of kind of boxing up RPA, and everyone's kind of keen to get started and everyone wants to move fast, but it's how you avoid disaster, how you keep things moving, living up to the promise. So that's kind of why I was kind of fascinated to talk to you a bit more. Do you want to give a bit more introduction, just your background, what you've been doing the last couple of years?
Yeah. So Accelirate is actually the largest niche provider of implementing RPA in the country. This is really our only focus. So a couple years ago, I mean, UiPath, as an example, probably only had 2 employees in the U.S. at that time. Obviously, Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere had a bigger footprint, but RPA in general was just really starting its wave. And we looked at the market and said, hey, there's going to be a significant need for implementation partners that have a focus on getting these programs up and running, that can do it onshore, because a lot of the back office is here, and without the heavy costs of the large management consulting companies, because ultimately it's all about scale and ROI. So you got to have a balance between all of those different components to have a successful program. So, a couple years ago as we started, we're now over 80 employees and growing. By the beginning of the year, we already have things in place that are going to put us over 100. So it's been very well received.
Well, interesting, because I mean, I don't want to get bogged down in the offshore-onshore debate, but what I do see happening is that, yes, it can be done offshore, but the reality is most clients, especially in the early stages, want onshore. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, so we talk to our clients about a progression. We always tell everyone the first 90 days especially, usually at least 180, needs to be onshore and often on site, where you're right next to their team members, working right alongside their team members, helping to get ahead of any potential pitfalls before they occur. Because there's executives are willing to there's tolerance for setting these programs up, but it only lasts so long. And you can only keep going back to that well for so long. So we always say, hey, the first 90 days, 6 months, get it onshore, get it on site, utilize a partner, get your program off the ground running, and then see where you want to go from there. Then look at other ways, but don't start there when you haven't even dipped your toe in it yet.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the sentiment everyone's asking for as well. The theory's there, and there's definitely progression, but short term, sit side by side, be in the same room.
The other interesting thing that we've seen, it seems counterproductive to what an implementer would want. But we spend a lot of time focusing on building up our clients' COE capabilities in their in-house for them, because what we found was if they don't have anyone, there's no enthusiasm, there's no interest, there's no people, there's no advocates, there's nobody driving their program, and it ends up just stalling because nobody is driving it on their side. Whereas if we get them to build up their COE capabilities, there's a lot more excitement, and scale ends up growing exponentially.
Well, you just jumped ahead to the first.
Oh, sorry.
No, I guess that was the challenges that kind of led to the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So really so RPA90X in general was the first year, obviously you're going to learn from your successes, you're going to learn from your challenges. One of the things we saw was that there was really no failed programs. There was just stalled programs. Companies that were buying bots and then a year later still had 2 bots in production, or had 20 or 30 bots in production, but all of a sudden they didn't have the right COE in place and the right governance structure, or across their different departments, and all of a sudden code was different everywhere, and maintenance programs were different, and who was controlling what. So a lot of times we've worked with a few enterprise clients that after 6 months to a year of getting these things in production had to hit the reset button and go all the way back.
Right.
And then lastly, we also saw a lot of companies failing to set up proper budgets. RPA is being sold fast and sold hard as low cost, cheap, quick to implement, and all those things are true, but not at scale.
You missed out easy.
Yeah, exactly. Easy. Anyone can do it. You can so and while that resonates with a lot of people because it's the magic bullet everyone's trying to get, it doesn't end up being real. So we help clients properly budget, get the right people to buy in, set the correct expectations, make sure IT. You really do need to have IT involved. This is a business-driven program, but without IT being involved, you're going to have a lot of shortcomings on the implementation. And again, it's not failing; it just leads to a stalled program. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, politically, it's just suicide. But we were just talking with one of our prospects in Asia. They brought in one of the large systems integrators, and they purposely just not involved IT, and you're going, this is just madness.
It's suicide. It really is.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons we're kind of seeing that is they're not, especially when a program is new, people aren't setting up a head of COE to begin with. So they're not, the business isn't saying, hey, you're in charge of this. And the other reason people are reluctant to take that title is they're afraid to leave their day job for this job that the business hasn't fully bought into, because 6 months down the line, if it fails, now what are they going to go back to? So there's a lot of people that are holding on to their old tasks because the business isn't fully bought in. And that's why one of the things we say here is buy-in, and that comes from a lot of different levels. It comes from upper management, executive team, from IT, making sure that everyone's bought into moving forward with this. Now that doesn't mean it's a blank check. And that's why a strong but quick implementation strategy is incredibly important. Take 90 days, get it done right, get it in production, see the results, focus on things that are going to give you ROI.
So why 90 days? Is that because it's kind of feasible what you can deliver in that period, or because of politically it's a size you can bite off quite easily, or organizations can plan that far ahead?
There's a statement that you can't have a baby in 1 month with 9 pregnant women.
You're filling your quotes today.
I've got less quotes today. And the reason for that is things just take time. Trying to force something in 6 weeks is just not realistic. Everything takes time, everything takes planning. And also, in 90 days, the way we approach it is to have 3 different resources doing 3 different things, at the same time. One person is planning infrastructure, setting up a dev, setting up a production environment. Another person is worrying about education and evaluation and doing process discovery and analysis. And the other one is, really getting into the coding, and then someone's doing the testing. And people's schedules are always changing, and you're not going to have everyone available. So really, we say it takes 90 days to get a program off the ground and into production.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was trying to work out of the 90 days, what percentage is technology, what percentage is non-technology.
Yeah, it's I don't have that exact metric tracked, but it's probably a healthy balance of them all, to be honest. Each person in those first 90 days plays a pivotal role, because you're constantly trying to help the client educate and evaluate, and because we don't want to spend 6 months telling them everything they should do. That's what a large management consulting company is going to do. It's going to 6 months they'll get $1 million piece of paper that tells them all the wonderful things they should do, and nothing's going to be in production. And then the funding runs out. But we feel that executives are really willing to spend the money on a quality 90-day program that's going to give them a lot of value and the results that they can attain. and also allows them to set a proper budget for the following 6 months.
And just in terms of the expectations, I mean, over that kind of 3-month period, I mean, I guess the first question, first of all, how do you manage the expectations based on what people have been sold in terms around RPA?
Yeah, that's part of the reason we do this onshore and on site, for these 3 months, because you're managing a lot of different people's expectations, and ultimately you really want to understand what their goal is. Some people, you can tell right away that they are off to the races. Everyone's bought in. They have 20 well-designed process design documents. They've already had lots of consulting, and they just want to get heavy on the development and implementation. So everyone's a little bit different. Typically, what we see though is it depends on how well it's bought in, how much IT support you really have. If IT is fully involved, the process designed documents are well vetted by some, and I say well vetted with the asterisk of by somebody that understands RPA, not just, hey, here's 20 processes we all hate and would love to get done, never have to do for the rest of my life. We look at them all, we're like, nope, and it's not the right, and then they're back to the drawing board. So a lot of times it is really resetting expectations, and coming and really telling them, hey, maybe we can get 1 or 2 of these included as a part of the 3 to 5 processes that are in production. But you really should just let us help you decide on which ones are going to produce the best ROI.
So by the end of 90 days, you reckon 3 to 5, and this is 90 calendar days, this is not 90 business days. You think correct. 3 to 5?
Yeah, three to 5 processes in production. It can be, we work with the client, obviously, so it's going to depend a little bit on, hey, we would much rather get this heavy, very complex process into production than a few mediums or 5 simple ones. We try to do a balance of the few, so they're seeing it from a variety of angles. That's why we say 3 to 5. We usually shoot for kind of like a high, medium, low, if you will.
And then what? I mean, I guess after the 90 days, what happens next? What are you expecting? Are you looking to continue the program for them? Or are you looking to make them self-sufficient, or a bit of both, or what's kind of?
Yeah, so that's what. So what happens after RPA90X? A big portion of those 90 days is really helping a client understand their program, with a 360-degree view. What we see a lot of times is, yes, now you're set up. You have, a decent governance structure in place. You have, the right infrastructure, the right processes identified. Team members are educated. But what's next? And what we often see a lot of times is, if you're not looking at this from a full 360, you end up with one pitfall. So, we have a progression for our clients, and we tell them, hey, some of this can, if you want to, move to lower cost, offshore, like I mentioned, is something we help build out for our clients so that they can get the benefit of the lower cost, but the same benefit of the good ROI from their program. So it's a progression. We believe that, it's after setting up your environment, you need to actually build out a robust COE. And that actually, there's a lot of things when you're looking at the cost of change, the cost of support, different predictive analytics, monitoring. I mean, at the end of the day, all of these things were tasks that were monitored. Probably had dashboards, reports were generated by people performing them. Now all of a sudden, all those things have gone away. So you want to rebuild your capability around. It's a workforce. It's a digital workforce, but it's a workforce, and it needs to be managed properly. And you need to keep your KPIs on in front of you, including how is your infrastructure performing? How are the bots performing? What is your utilization? A lot of people forget about the utilization of their license. We often see, actually, without a proper COE, the utilization sits in the 50 to 60% range, whereas with a proper COE, that's sitting in the 85 to 90 range. And for those that don't know, bot utilization is one bot can perform one process at a time, not concurrently. So you get 24 hours of utilization. So if you are only using it for 12 hours out of the 24, then you're at 50% utilization. And if you then get another license, your cost goes up from a software perspective, and your infrastructure will end up going up as well. So that's why setting up a good COE. Then we go to what we call RPA 360, and that's really a program around how much you need to, how much automation you really want to get done in the next year, and then ultimately a managed robotic operations center where the maintenance occurs. Because the last thing we help our clients understand is, if you're not careful, you're going to replace a $50,000 data entry person with a $120,000 RPA developer, and all of a sudden a year later you're going to be like, well, why haven't my costs improved? Well, you replace this with that, and and you still have your license costs, you still have your infrastructure. Now you've just moved it all, and you haven't actually improved it. So with the proper COE.
That's a conversation that always gets lost. The kind of the minutiae of replacing your low cost job with a high cost job, and a bot cost, and infrastructure cost, and the consultants on board. It's kind of people seem to forget about that in the rush to do stuff.
Yep, absolutely. And actually, it's funny because I think that's the part of the next slide is, what about sport man? And again, the unexpected.
The one thing I was going to say was, I was surprised that without the COE, it was even as high as 50% utilization for a bot. I would have guessed it would be in the 20s. I'm kind of surprised that even.
Yeah, I mean, it is 50%. People are still, that's been an average. Obviously, we do see it worse sometimes. But it's an average of around 50%. At the end of the day, they do get the right people in place, and there are people looking at it. But it all depends on when they make that shift. And again, unexpected support costs often comes from, again, RPA is being sold as easy, simple, anyone can do it. And there are components to that are true. But the magic, the magic that it's all going to be completely simple, and one person can do any and all of it. Hey, I don't even need to switch, become a full-time developer. I can stay in accounting and just develop my own bots in the side. It's just not realistic. So now all of a sudden people are adding headcount they weren't expecting, and those headcount become more and more costly because PwC or another vendor is going to, as soon as someone has RPA, the costs go up as soon as they have good experience. So
yeah, there's a whole study to be done in that, because I think it's a fascinating piece. I mean, we quite often get involved when organizations are just coming off the consulting kind of support, and they're now looking to stand on their own 2 feet, and they're looking to kind of upskill their workforce. And it's a kind of nervous time for them, because they're realizing, wait, this business case we built has to kind of start happening, and there's a lot of uncertainty, let alone the knowledge. But it's also fascinating.
No, absolutely, and that kind of rolls into. And that kind of goes into, knowing who to train and what to train them in. Absolutely, people need to be trained in this technology. This is not a Band-Aid solution. This is something that companies are going to use as, another major enterprise software in their business. So people need to understand it. They, we often push a lot that, hey, everyone should go through the training. You'll be able to uncover who's kind of got a knack for it, who doesn't. We spend a lot more time on helping clients build out their business analysts to understand, the process pipeline, because at the end of the day, you can do as much development as you want, but if you don't have the pipeline in your queue, you're going to have a lot of developers that are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. So there's a balance between getting the interest in all the different departments and getting, things documented. And the other thing a lot of people don't realize is your processes are probably going to change, because before, John in accounting had to get, run a report at 8:30 a.m. because he got in at 8 a.m. And then after he did that report, it had to be checked at 9 a.m. by his boss because, someone's got to check the numbers. But on either of those two things need to happen because the bots won't make a mistake, and the bot can run at 2 o'clock in the morning. So there is re-engineering, that is involved. And then, like I said, there is a time and a place for offshore, but we've seen that more on the maintenance, or very specific development where communication is being done by an onshore on-site team. And we tell that with everyone, whether you're, I've had plenty of conversations with people that were outside the U.S. and I told them the same thing. They're like, "Oh, hey, we want one global business partner." And I'm like, "Good luck with that, but you're gonna be creating the same issue." So my statement was, hey, more than anything, you probably should look for a partner that's focused on your territory, and wherever that back office sits. I've seen a very successful offshore program with travelers, actually, because they have all of their, a lot of their back office is offshore already. So then they're sitting together, and that's a big plus. But again, I've also had a lot of people say that, hey, we're struggling on the process discovery and analysis side. So, and that again, so wherever the main component needs to be done right alongside those team members.
Okay, there's a whole subject in there, totally. And so in terms of preparing people for, what next, is there a natural momentum, or does the 90 days come to an end and then you have to kind of get the political buy-in or the budget buy-in to keep going?
Yeah, it's funny. Within that 90 days, we actually usually clients end up doubling down a lot of the times, to be honest, because they see the success, they see where it's going. Big reasons components of the RPA90X program is the 6-month process pipeline. We share that very specifically. It has the current department, the current process, the current amount of man hours that it takes, the complexity based on how many exceptions versus, what, is there computer vision that's needed, how much time is going to take to develop versus how much time it takes to do it manually, and ultimately show them a development cost and what they're going to save in this year and the coming year. Once you factor in licensing, software maintenance, and all those other things. So, there's a progression. Generally speaking, the way we see it is set it up, budget for it properly. A lot of times we actually see that being successfully done at the end of the year. Because or a part where they want to budget for next year. So there are people that will start RPA90X and then pause their program for a few months until they budget for the next wave, and then they're like, all right, now this is what we want to do. So depending on the size, most company, the reality of it is most companies end up saying, hey, we just want to accelerate RPA. And I try to get a dime every time someone uses the word accelerate, but I haven't been too successful collecting them yet.
Very good. Well, just as we close off, there's questions coming in. I mean, a lot of the focus is on large organizations and how they use automation or RPA. What do you see at the smaller end? For smaller service companies, consultancy businesses, or accountancy businesses, the application of RPA for them.
Sorry, are you saying the application for smaller companies using RPA?
To actually use, yep, exactly. Yep.
So, we have there is a threshold. We typically see it right around 1,000 employees, where anything less, I have seen it. It usually doesn't end up going as. All right. So one of the things I tell people is like,
is this because of budget reasons, or just the cost of bringing you in, or is this because of the technology doesn't apply to them?
The technology will always apply, but the biggest thing is I always tell, or at least my own personal statement is, if your goal is to get 5 bots in production, then you're just in the wrong area. Don't. There's just too many components to it to think about this as a 5-bot program. It doesn't mean you have to scale up to the thousands, but at a minimum, I tell people, look, if you can't fathom budgeting like $500,000 for your first year, then it's not really realistic, to build out a program. That's about the magic number we see that for a company to be successful with RPA, year one costs are minimally going to be about $500,000. When you factor everything in, and that's actually a conservative estimate. So is it feasible? Yes, but $500,000 to someone with 200 employees is a heck of a lot more than someone with 10,000 employees. So it doesn't change whether that minimum investment doesn't change whether you're 200 or 20,000 employees. It's still a minimum investment.
But what we're seeing is also a lot of opportunities at kind of a desktop level, at kind of a sort of very specific process level that, maybe it's not full-blown RPA, but certainly it's huge time savings or removal of transactional work. So, I mean, a lot of that can be applied surprisingly cheaply with limited knowledge, but it's I find more the perspective and the mindset looking out for these opportunities, recognizing that they can be addressed, and you have to invest a fair bit of time to do the automation work. A number of programs we've started off, I was going to say a number of things we've started off internally. The first 90% of the journey has been dead easy, but the last 10% has been pretty painful to actually get over the finishing line. So nothing happens fast, but certainly the opportunities at a desktop, shouldn't be ignored for smaller organizations.
It will be, but here's the interesting thing, and this goes back to some of the difference in methodologies between some of the different vendors, and won't get too much into that today. But you should never be starting your program at the desktop level. You see, one of the fears of starting, one of the biggest fears of RPA is shadow IT. Shadow IT. And I just saw a comment. There are solutions suitable for all sizes and business needs. There are, absolutely. I'm not denying that. It's just when you actually factor in the cost of See, here's the biggest challenge with getting started with RPA. If you don't have expertise in house, you often don't know the right questions to ask or how to properly evaluate people. I've seen a lot of times where they hire people just because their resume has everything they need on it. And now all of a sudden you may be having this person lead you down this rabbit hole where you don't. So if it's done correctly, absolutely. We've seen it be successful where it's just a desktop automation, and it does save a lot of time and hassle. But generally speaking, as a program, you don't want you don't want to add another software and another vendor and another thing to your business when it's going to be such a very small component of it. We just typically, best business practices is what we've seen.
Again, following on from that, just before we close off, do you see organizations taking responsibility for actually doing the implementation, the operation work, or you just think there's an ongoing need for external support, consultants to do that?
Yeah, so they're all consultants use. It depends. What we see is once companies are bought into RPA, their goal is to just go as fast as they can because they want to recognize those results. The faster they get it automated, the faster they start seeing those results. So if they're able to do it long term, great, absolutely. But a lot of times, even if they build in that internal capability, we see that they are trying to just go faster. So the key being, can you find a quality partner that at a cost that allows you to recognize that ROI while you're implementing it, and then use that money. So the first thing that's going to happen is the owner is going to invest $500,000 of their own money. But year two, they're probably going to have $500,000 in savings. So now you're playing with house money. Once you're playing with house money, it becomes a lot easier to say, hey, instead of recognizing that $500,000 in savings, let's double down and let's get $2 million in savings, and then let's double down and get $4 million in savings. And it often opens up the opens up the purse a bit more.
Okay, conscious that we're at the end of the half hour. is there plans for RPA90X? Is there kind of an extended version? You think that would suit companies? Or RPA15X, the 15-day fast start?
Again, we've seen that. Look, it all depends on where a client is. We do a lot of engagements where it's very customized to a client. So absolutely. But what we did was say, hey, where is the majority of our clients? And a lot of them don't know what to ask for. They don't even know what they're looking for. So we kind of packaged the key areas that avoid the shortcomings, make sure that the program is successful, gets it up and off the ground, and in a reasonable amount of time. Absolutely, depending on the client's needs. A lot of times they'll come and say, hey, we just need these 20 processes automated, and there's times where that happens. But so yes, in short, the answer is yes, but we like to package where we see the biggest needs.
Right, Matt. I mean, first of all, fascinating stuff you're doing. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
Generally, just keep in touch, and we'll share your details with people online. And this video will be online within the next day or so.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Right.
Good talking
Cheers,
to you.
Matt.
Have a good one.
Bye. You too.